Hello and welcome to the Tank Club. It's the Necrom PTS. We're going to be looking at two main things in this video. One, has the Arcanist Tank changed at all from the preview server to the PTS? Have the devs listened to the feedback? And we're looking at the Mythic item. That means tanks may never have to block again. So firstly, we're going to dive into the Arcanist skills and just have a quick look at all the skills and what they do, if they're good for tanking. Starting off with Gibbering Shield, and this is the ultimate. Nothing really here that stands out. It gives a damage shield. It absorbs 60% of all damage for 10 seconds. So it doesn't absorb all damage, just 60%. It then deals damage back at the enemy, and that is pretty much it. When you morph it, you've got the option of a bigger shield, so 110k damage. A max of 110k, but it's not absorbing 100% of damage, it's absorbing 60%. So you're still going to take 40% full damage from the enemy, it's going to shield 60%, and then you're going to return damage. With the other morph, you're able to give up to 6 allies a damage shield, and when you really compare this, yes, it's a bigger shield, but you can gain a damage shield for multiple people with Igneous Shield on a DK. An Igneous Shield will absorb 100% of the damage up to the maximum of its shield. So yes, it's a bigger shield. Is it worth? Are you really going to be like using this instead of something like Aggressive Horn? It doesn't look like it. If we have a little look at how this ultimate looks when we use it, and it creates the bubble around our character. Next we've got Runic Jolt, and this was the taunt skill. So we get a taunt. This has been changed from the preview server. It's now got an increased usefulness. So while slotted, damage taken is reduced by 2% per active crux. It wasn't like that on the preview server. So we've got a nice little benefit there where they're making use of crux. This is one of the big things we talked about in terms of there's not enough crux generation and there's not enough worthwhile crux expenses. So Runic Jolt, it's a taunt, it's minor maim. It generates crux as well, and while slotted, damage taken is reduced. When we morph this, so Runic Sunder converts into a stamina ability, it deals physical damage, reduces your target's armor and gain armor. Now there isn't anywhere here that mentions about gaining armor, but craft a defensive apocryphal rune that deals physical damage. The rune steals 1900 armor, so we can assume potentially that we're going to gain that. It applies minor maim, and it also taunts enemies. This is somewhat forcing tanks into groups. This is forcing Arcanist tanks, and it's not a bad thing. This is a unique group buff with the 1900 pen, and it means that you have to be a tank to use it, because you're not going to see a healer or a damage dealer slotting a taunt to give the almost 2k pen. So it's definitely making tanks more prominent as potentially playing in group content. But that looks like the better morph. The stamina morph, 1377 stamina. It looks like it's going to be the best option. Even though it is a taunt, I can understand the reasons for it. The Rune Spike Ward. So this is your damage shield skill. It scales off your max health. The first time you take direct damage, the shield retaliates and deals damage back, and you consume crux to heal yourself. This is again an adjustment from the preview server. So the devs have listened to the feedback on some of these skills. We mentioned there wasn't enough to spend crux on, there wasn't enough generation. The healing was a bit tricky. This is going to be a really solid skill because now you've got the option to consume some crux to get a little bit of a heal. So you're not relying on the other healing skill, which is not very reliable. So really, really good change. When we look at the morphs, you can consume crux to refund the cost. I don't think that's going to be worth it because you're going to have so much magicka on the Arcanist that it's definitely not needed. The other morph is going to give you a drastically increased size of your damage shield for the first second. Look at the size of that shield, almost 30k for the first second. If you don't use the whole shield, you get an additional 17k shield for 5 seconds afterwards. Because this scales with your max health, really, really good. Obviously you can still consume the crux to heal yourself. So this is going to be a really good skill to use when you know that you're going to take damage. So when you know you've got that big hit coming in, you can react to it quickly, get your damage shield up, and that's going to protect you. That's definitely going to be the better morph, in my opinion. If we have a little look at what this one looks like, so when we cast it, we get this nice green glow around our character to show that we've got that damage shield active. Next we've got Fate Woven Armor, so this one gives major resolve. this will also apply Minor Breach to enemies. So when enemies are hitting you, you're going to apply Minor Breach back out to them. This will make some content much easier. When you think if you go into a dungeon ad pull, you throw down your caltrops, the enemies are hitting you, you're applying major Minor Breach with literally no effort. Things are attacking you, you put down a caltrops, everything's got major and Minor Breach. This makes double Frost Staff kind of setup even easier, so you don't even need to worry about getting the chilled effect now for that AoE breach. But it's just really going to be nice for like those ad pulls and stuff. When you've got a lot of enemies, they're all hitting you, you don't have to worry about trying to inflict that Minor Breach on multiple targets. You can just get it with this one skill. When you look at the different morphs, Crux, Weaver, Armor for me is the better one. It generates Crux. We need to be generating Crux now because it seems like there's more usefulness to having. The block mitigation. Consume Crux to gain 5% additional block mitigation per Crux. So you can get up to 3 Crux in total to get 15% block mitigation. Now, if the new Mythic item is anything to go by, you may never need to block again. So that doesn't seem something that's super worthwhile. We're already able to get to quite high block mitigation without this, so it doesn't seem worthwhile to consume Crux to get that block mitigation, from my personal opinion. I'd much rather have the generation. Every 5 seconds, we're going to generate some Crux. That means we've got more stuff to spend. We can make more use out of this one. When we use this skill, and this is what it looks like, get a nice bit of green glow around us again. Next, we've got Runic Defense. Cast forth a complex rune granting you and your group Minor Resolve. A group buff of Minor Resolve. We get Minor Protection for ourselves. The first time you are damaged while below 50% health, the Minor Protection is consumed and you heal for 12.8k. So now we've got the addition of this heal combined with the other one. So we're not reliant just on one heal. So we have the option of having this for emergencies. And the good thing is, you can activate this skill. You want to maintain it because it's giving a group Minor Resolve. It's giving you Minor Protection. If you happen to take damage and you are low on health, it will automatically proc. You don't have to keep like casting it to get the heal. It will just automatically heal you. So in some ways, it's actually pretty good. You've got the option of obviously this skill if you need a heal, and then obviously for those emergency moments where you might be low on health, this is going to automatically proc and heal you. One of the major changes they've done to this skill, this wasn't like this on the preview server, this was actually a stun. They've now converted it over to an immobilization. So this is fantastic. This has took the Arcanist from really low at the bottom of the pile all the way up in terms of their ability to play within group content, especially in those dungeons. So before we didn't have access to any kind of good crowd control. The immobilization is a massive change. Really pleased about this. It's good to see that like the feedback has been heard and they've made some good adjustments that will make this class much more useful for PvE tanking. So now you're going to get the option of an immobilization. After 1 second, the spell weave immobilizes enemies within 7 meters for 2 seconds. It's actually a bit longer. When we press on that and we look at it on the bar, it's actually 3 seconds when it's leveled up. So you're going to activate it in combat. It looks like this. Look, quite a nice looking skill. Big AoE skill there. And then after 1 second, you're going to get a nice immobilization. The last skill in the Soldier of Apocrypha, we've got the best skill in my opinion, Rune of Eldritch Horror. So this skill is going to apply minor vulnerability for 10 seconds. Forget everything else. We've got to look at this morph, the colourless pool morph. It applies minor brittle to the target. So we get minor brittle and minor vulnerability. And it's really easy as well. When we look at it up here, 20 seconds of minor vulnerability and minor brittle. That's the most important thing. You don't need to be using a Frost Staff. It's a really long duration. It's really easy access for your group to make sure they've got a good uptime on minor brittle. Absolutely fantastic skill. When we look at the passives here, so we've got increased armor. We've got the increase of recovery. And the good thing about this is this will stack up based on how many skills you've got slotted. So if you've got a couple of skills slotted from the Soldier of Apocrypha, you're going to have even more recovery. Health, magicka, and stamina recovery per skill slotted. You've also got another group buff with minor evasion. 20 seconds of minor evasion. It can recast every 5 seconds. So really nice. And the good thing is that this is going to be quite useful in some other kind of newer content. I could definitely see places like Dreadsail Reef, Rockgrove, Sunspire, things like that where it's good. There are some places where it's not going to be very useful. So in those situations where there isn't very much AoE damage, this isn't really going to be doing anything. But there are some of the harder content nowadays where they are implementing more higher damage AoEs, even if generally AoE damage isn't super prominent and super hard hitting in ESO from my experience. There are some specific places where you really want to have it, and that's going to be nice to have when it's needed. We've also got increased ultimate, so gain ultimate once every 8 seconds when you consume crux. In terms of the other skill lines, when we look at Herald of the Tome, we've got a couple of good skills in here. Abysmal Impact, this is the skill that shoots out in front of you. Would have been amazing if this would have been a little pulse skill maybe, but it's not. It is an immobilization as well, but it's only just in front of your character, and it consumes crux to extend the duration of the immobilization. So now we don't have to really worry about that. But it's something you could potentially use. It is a shame, like I say, that this one of the morphs didn't convert the Magicka morph there. It would have been really nice if that would have been a pull skill. Tome Bearer's Inspiration. This is a skill that has some use, I think, for a tank, especially the recuperative morph. So when dealing damage, you restore Magicka and stamina. So it's going to be, you activate it, so it puts runes on your weapon that pulse with power once every 5 seconds. Each pulse enchants your class abilities, so just your Arcanist abilities. Striking an enemy with one deals magic damage, and it restores 510 Magicka and stamina, and generates crux. So this has potential use for a tank as well, because it's going to give you 3 useful things. So definitely something to consider, especially because we have skills that we activate on the enemy pretty regular. The other skill is this one at the bottom, Rune of Displacement. Place the rune under the target that deals damage and pulls nearby enemies after a delay. It's currently not working properly. We need to wait and see if this is fixed within the PTS cycle over the next couple of weeks. It does have an 8 meter radius. If we slot it on the bar, 8 meter radius, and it's got a 22 meter range. So you can throw it 22 meters and it puts an 8 meter radius around one enemy. It then vacuums everything onto that enemy. It's a shame really that this doesn't have a bigger radius, because the problem is it would be too overpowered probably in PvP, being able to stack up huge areas. But it just, for me, it's not probably going to be as useful as it might seem, just because the radius isn't big enough for PvE content. If dungeons were kind of a little bit more compact and there wasn't enemies spread out in every corner of a room, it would make it extremely useful. And in some dungeons it is going to be good, because it will just put everything in as long as you make sure you hit the right target with it. It is on a delay though, so you have to make sure that the enemies would be walking close together to benefit from it. But potentially a good skill. We're going to have to wait and see how this develops over the PTS. The passives in the Herald of the Tome section aren't very useful in terms of tanks. It's mostly damage dealer passives, so we don't really need to worry about those. When it comes to the healer skill line, just the main skill for me here is the Arcanist's Domain. Either morph seems pretty good. The effects remain on you and your allies for a short duration after leaving, and heals you and your allies in the area over time. This is the Yolnahkriin Killer. This is going to provide minor courage, minor fortitude, intellect and endurance. It increases the weapon spell damage by 215 and health, magicka and stamina recovery by 15%. It's also going to heal over 20 seconds. So a really, really good skill, even for a tank, because it's a guaranteed heal over time, similar to kind of Ash Cloud, but with a lot more benefits. It also means that Yolnahkriin isn't needed anymore, which is a bit of a shame, because it makes things kind of more difficult to plan. It means that that gear set we've been holding on to for a while now, that's always been useful, it's always the go-to set, especially for trial content, isn't going to be needed as much now if this skill's used, but a very good skill nonetheless. When we look at the passives here, so we have got healing increased by 3% for each active crux. That's quite nice. When you generate crux, you restore magicka and stamina, whichever maximum is higher, so that's really nice as well, so more incoming resources. This is absolutely huge. Magicka and stamina recovery increased by 18%. We've already got absolutely huge amounts of recovery, and that's inflated even more by this passive. And then increase the size of your damage shields. Another really, really good passive. If we actually look at, I'm going to use the potion there, 3,887 magicka recovery, that's without a Munderstone. Don't think I've activated a Munderstone. If I activate all my skills, massive stats, guys. We've got huge stats on our character. It's not a fully built character, just messing about. But we've got some really, really nice things that we're seeing here. One thing that I'm really pleased to see is that the feedback has been heard and they've made some really solid adjustments to obviously accommodate making these Arcanist tanks much better for PvE content. Final thing I wanted to show you is the new Mythic item. The new heavy legs Mythic item. This is wild. While you are above 33% stamina, reduce your damage taken by 50% and lose 1,567 stamina whenever you take direct damage, up to once every 0.5 seconds. Does this mean we are never going to need to block again on the tank? Well, let me just show you what this looks like. On the Arcanist especially, one of the crazy things is we have this huge damage shield. If we activate this damage shield just as we get hit by this boss, we're able to actually take 0 damage. 0 damage. We're able to fully shield every last drop of damage, which is something you're not usually able to do. So we're not taking any damage at all. We're going to stand inside the debuff in a second and show you that one as well. So as you can see, not only is this damage shield massively strong, but we don't need to block. Even if we don't shield up, we're not blocking at all. The new Mythic item means we don't need to, because when you block an attack, you have 50% base block mitigation. With this, we're able to not block, so we're able to permanently gain stamina back. We can just permanently gain stamina back. Now, in some ways, this is making tanking more accessible, because it just means that in situations where maybe you're trying to maintain some buffs, you want to do heavy attacks, if you're using this Mythic item, you're barely going to take any damage. It's just absolutely insane. Like, is this an effort to make tanking more accessible? But for people who drop their block by accident, it doesn't matter. And the fact is, it's costing a little bit more stamina than it would to block, but we've got 100% uptime on our block, on our stamina recovery. Whereas if we're blocking, and maybe we're blocking 50% of the time, we're not going to be getting loads and loads of stamina back. Whereas this allows us to not only not block, but we're gaining a ton of stamina as well. And you can see our resources are just full the entire time. We're using skills non-stop. It's just absolutely crazy. So that is the new heavy armor Mythic item, guys. So there we go, guys. Huge improvements compared to the preview server during the playtest when we tested this out. We've got this ridiculous new Mythic item. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.